how I got where I'm at.
Open to interpretation.
I mean, I would guess majority of people ask me, how did I get where I am at right now? And that story is, I guess I'll just start saying it. So I started in social media. Do I talk to the camera or you? Cool, I'll just riff kind of. I started in social media in 2011, and I was a senior in high school. And the reason, well, how I got started is I was actually in my science class, and I downloaded Instagram because I don't know what it is about filters, but they make you look that much better, right? And I wanted the filters on my photo. So I downloaded it, and I didn't understand like what the whole followers concept meant. And I would upload my photo and delete it right after, right? But I would have the photo with a filter, which is really cool. But like most teenagers, I didn't spend a lot of time studying for my classes. I spent a lot of time on my phone. So I actually studied Instagram and learned how the platform worked and what it meant to have followers and how I could build my own brand. And that's essentially what I started doing. So I was maybe like 5'6" at the time, maybe 5'5", and I started branding myself as a model. And I didn't know what an agency was. I didn't know what anything was, to be honest. But I just continued to roll with it. And the way I started with, the selfies, right, on the phone. And then I upgraded to a selfie, like a self-timer on the phone. And then I begged my sister to use her laptop because she had a self-timer on it. And I would put it, she finally let me use it. And I would put it on my mom's ironing board. And I would go pick out my own outfits and all that stuff. And when I was doing modeling, or what I considered at the time to be modeling, I wanted to learn kind of the craft as a whole. So I learned how to edit a photo, right? I learned how to take a photo because I would take the photos myself. I ended up buying a T3i, and I would take my own photos. And I learned how to market it. So I did that for maybe 6 months, and then another 6 months outside of high school after I graduated. Now, for me, I built an audience at that time to maybe 150,000 followers, and I thought it was time to kind of take my audience and bring it to another platform. So I started to cross over to Twitter and then YouTube. So I started crossing over on these platforms, and I started posting specific content for each of those platforms. And I continued to market myself and build my brand as like a model. But when I cross over to Twitter and YouTube, I made it more as like a comedian, kind of like being goofy and funny, right? Because you don't want to be typecast, right? So there's some people that they post so much serious stuff that if they post like a funny photo, it's kind of like, what? It's like weird in a way, right? As far as branding and perspective wise. So I thought it was very important to incorporate that because that's just part of me. I'm just goofy, right? So I started doing that. Now Vine came out. So contrary to the belief that I started on Vine, which a lot of people think, I actually started on Instagram and then crossed over to two other platforms prior to even getting on it. So I crossed over to Vine, and I'm very analytical, so I knew that Vine was going to blow up. So I kind of blew up with the app, and I started posting a lot on there and spending a lot of time on Vine and coming up with ideas. And yeah, so I did that, and I have my best friend Chris. He kind of was along the ride with me, and he's Mormon. So out of high school, we had a whole year where we didn't really do anything. We kind of just hung out all the time. I did my social media stuff, but we would always chill, right? So he actually ended up going on his mission for 2 years. And before he left, he wanted me to do two things. He wanted me to cut my hair, because I had like long surfer wavy hair. He wanted me to cut my hair, and he wanted me to have a meet and greet. Now the hair thing, I had long hair since, I had long hair in 8th grade actually, and then I cut it. And then I broke up with my girlfriend my junior year, and he convinced me to grow it out. So I grew it out, and like it fit a lot better than the short hair at the time. So then I wanted to keep it, and I was very uncomfortable with the whole idea of having short hair. So right when he left on his mission, he was begging me to cut it while he was there, but I waited. He left, and then I cut it the next day. I went to go cut my hair, and then the next day after that, I actually went to New York for my first business meeting, which was with Judy McGrath, and she was CEO of Viacom. But right now, at the time, she left, and she was doing her own thing with Astronauts Wanted. I don't know if you're familiar. So I went to New York, and I met up with her, And I kind of, is there water?
Yeah, we can get. When you guys want to grab water real quick?
Thank you.
I was like, there's that bottle, but I don't know.
I mean, I would have drank it, yeah.
Yeah.
But so in New York, while I was in New York, I ended up having a meet and greet, and I didn't know what to expect. I kind of was like very skeptical. I didn't want to be that guy that had a meetup and had 3 people show up, you know. And that was something that scared me a lot in Chino too, because it's a small city. So when I was in New York, I was like, all right, I'm gonna do it. I ended up tweeting and posting an Instagram photo that I was gonna be at the Time Warner Mall, and I was staying at the Hudson. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Can I keep it in my lap or? Okay, cool. So I posted that I was gonna be at the Time Warner Mall.
Sorry to be annoying, but
I'll take it out. Yeah. Thanks. And I had my business meetings and all that. At the end of the day, I went to the mall through the side and came out the front, and there were 1,000 girls just waiting to meet me, right? And I didn't know what to expect at all, so it kind of was like a shock. And I remember the moment when I walked out the doors, I saw like a couple girls turn, and then all of them kind of did like that whole like looking back, and they saw me, and I was kind of like, oh shoot, I didn't know what was gonna happen, and then they all just started charging towards me. So I started to get scared, and I don't know why, but I looked to my right, and there's probably one of the biggest guys I've ever seen in my life, like hands down biggest guy I've ever seen in my life. It's like 6'7", buff dude. He looks at me and he looks at the girls, and he pulls out from under his shirt an undercover cop badge, right? So I'm like, yo, you're my guy. I start running towards him. He grabs my hand, and we're going down to the subway to try and get away from everyone. And before we got to the subway, they circled us, and we had a grip like this, and the fans were they're so strong like together that they started to pull our grip away. So they ended up pulling us away, and they had to come get us. So we had to like fight his way back to get me. We ran down into the subway, did like a little juke move, ran back up, and the Hudson was right here at the Time Warner Mall. We started going around. Now, as I'm running, all you see is me running, right? And then an undercover cop running behind me, and then a bunch of girls screaming. So I'm running past this hotel, and tell me why there's a bunch of guys with suits on, right? I'm running past it, and I'm excited. I'm like, yo, I'm about to get home, I'm about to be safe. Like, I don't want to deal with that, right? Yeah. Because it was chaotic. It was very chaotic. As I'm running past these guys with the suits, one of them grabs me and throws me against the wall. And I'm like, yo, what is going on? Like, things just keep happening, right? So he has me up against the wall, and he's kind of like, he was like questioning me, but my mind was racing so much. I was like, what are you doing? Like, why are you throwing me against the wall? Like, and then my mom was like, oh, I can't let these girls catch up to me because it's going to be like chaos. Yeah. Right. So finally the undercover cop comes up, talks to the guy. Apparently the president was staying in that hotel. So they were like super strict. They let me go. I ran into into the hotel room at the Hudson, and I got away. But I took 2 things away from that. One, I need a bodyguard if I'm ever going to do that again. And 2, this is an actual thing. Right. So I ended up going to another meet and greet called MagCon, which stands for Meet and Greet Convention. And it was in Houston, and 400 girls paid to see me and 4 other guys. And growing up, there was a guy by the name of Rob Deerdeck that I looked up to. Yeah. So instead of taking short-term money from sponsorships, he actually wanted equity in the companies, right? And that's what he did. So I kind of applied that to my life. And I told the owner of MagCon at the time that I wanted to be part of it. And he brought me on board. So I went on board, and I was responsible. My duties for the company were to scout talent and come up with marketing campaigns and kind of strategy for the whole brand. So I went out, and I picked Nash Greer, Shawn Mendes, Jack and Jack, Taylor was already on. Taylor and Aaron were already on it. Matthew Espinoza, Carter Reynolds, Mahogany. There's a couple other people I'm sure that I missed out, but we started a tour around the U.S. and I didn't go to school for business, so unfortunately I'm learning through trial and error, and it's very hands-on. So when I get screwed, I get like really screwed. But the thing that I had to deal with at that time was, we had something good, and then people were coming in, kind of infiltrating it and like pulling me away from it, but I didn't see it at the time. So I ended up getting taken away from MagCon. It fell apart, and then I started my with the people that took me away, I started my own like management company, and I wanted to build a bunch of verticals under it. They turns out that they were the shady ones. I found out. Went back, got MagCon back myself, and then kind of assembled the whole thing together. Um, so yeah, that's where I'm at right now.
That's pretty amazing story.
Yeah.
What's your personal story? Like, just like in a nutshell, like, what's important to you? Like, how, leaving all like the social media stuff aside,
Yeah.
like, how would you tell people who you are?
Well, what's most important to me is my family. Definitely, I have my dad, my mom, my sister, and growing up, my parents were divorced. So ever since I was 2, so it's kind of like a normal thing for me. Luckily, I wasn't like 12 or 15 when it happened. Unfortunately for my sister, she was kind of a little bit older, so she kind of understood it a little bit more. I didn't know what was going on, right? So growing up, it was kind of like going to my mom's house, and then every other weekend I'd go to my dad's house, and kind of switching back and forth. And then I moved around a lot. So eventually, we ended up moving to Hacienda Heights, and I lived there for a couple years. And then my mom actually got a house in Chino, and then we've lived there ever since.
What about like your friends? Like, what is important to you about friendship, and how do you try to be a good friend?
For me, loyalty. That's the best way. It's very important to me, loyalty. And I think when I think friendship, when I think about friendship and loyalty and stuff, I think about my best friends, and that's Chris Gonzalez and Aaron Carpenter. So Chris was kind of like, I met him my sophomore year in high school, and it's kind of weird. I don't know if you guys are like religious or anything like that, but I actually didn't really have a lot of friends my freshman year, and I would kind of like sit off at lunch like by myself. And I remember my sophomore year, I was like crying because I literally did not have any friends, and I was like praying. I just wanted one friend, and I ended up meeting Chris like the next week, so it was pretty cool. We ended up doing a quinceañera together, which was fun. That's where we bonded. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Do you guys know what a quinceañera is?
Yes, I've never been to one, and I'm like, how do I get myself?
Dude, I had to do the little dance and everything. Yeah.
With the girl?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wasn't the main one. I think it's a chump. Do you know what it's called? The champaron?
It's like
Champarones. Yeah, whatever. But I wasn't the main one, but I was one of the guys, and I remember it was in front of her whole family. I was so nervous. So nervous. And yeah, it was really fun. But that's where we kind of like first started hanging out, and then ever since then we've been like nonstop, just every day hanging out. That's where I met him. I met Aaron on MagCon actually in Houston, and I ended up living with him in his hometown, Shreveport, Louisiana, for like a couple months, which was really fun.
What was that like for you being a California kid all of a sudden in Louisiana?
It's fun. Growing up, my dad would take me camping a lot, so there's not really like nothing really kind of throws me off. They like to do a lot of the outdoor stuff, which I love, and I think I adapted really well to it. And everyone's so polite out there. That's what I love too. It's like, yes ma'am, no ma'am. It's awesome.
What does authenticity mean to you? And as like someone who has built a career off of sort of social media, like how do you continue to like be yourself and get that, like, I don't know, keep it real, for lack of
It's simple. You just keep it real. I think it's very important because nowadays people know when something's not authentic, right? A fan can tell if something's not authentic just like that. And you can start to see a lot of brands, like not even people, a lot of brands are having trouble with that because people can see an advertisement and all that stuff, like things that just aren't authentic, right? So let's say if a fan's a fan of someone, but that someone's doing an endorsement or something like that that's not authentic, they can just tell, right? And I think what's really cool is that it's very important for me to stay authentic, and I have that relationship with my fans to where they know almost just about everything, and I'm very straight up about just about everything, except for like the family and personal stuff, right? So I think that's just.
Why do you think teens are so much better at social media than adults? Because like for you, for example, you have built this huge following as an individual, like you said, business school.
I think because the new generation is growing up with it, right? Instead of kind of the older generation they're used to traditional ways and they're kind of adapting, whereas the new generation is growing up with it and that's all they know.
Mm-hmm. What do you think is going to be the next like big thing in social media?
App wise,
I mean, just in general, like where's it headed now?
well, right now, this is like what I'm kind of working on right now. There's so much. There's really a lot. So with MagCon, I'm working to make it. I want to make it like the staple brand in social media and kind of a place to where these people, because in social media it's like the wild wild west, right? You're having random people that are saying they're managers, random people saying they're agents, kind of getting a hold of these kids that have a lot of power and kind of doing what they do and kind of taking advantage of them. And that's like across the boards, like way across the boards, right? And I kind of want to make MagCon the staple brand in social media to where these kids can come and be taken care of in a way. Um, and for social media, it's like it's the new famous, right? The new generation of famous. And for me, it's how do I bridge that gap of traditional and the new generation famous, right? So, because there's a fine line. There's a fine line. You can hear it on the tabloids. It's like, oh, this famous person, and then this person on social media, right? But in reality, this person on social media has way more impressions than a lot of the traditional people that are famous, right? So it's about building the gap and or bridging the gap, I would say, and kind of how do you connect those two to where they're all in unison and in sync. So that's something I'm working on. I think within this year is going to be very important for that, and kind of being on the forefront of doing it myself. I definitely see this year being super important for that. But I think within the next 2, 3, 4 years, I think in 4 years it'll 100% be mainstream.